Mm,
Marble, your mic's not on stream. I just want to tell you that. Yeah, I'm serious. All right, be right back.
oh,
So much. It makes me so mad.
oh.
That was Ashley.
Okay, there we go. So it's on. Do I restart? Yeah, I'm gonna restart stream. I'm just gonna try to even say it. All right. I don't even know if that worked. I'll just have to cut out the beginning. I'm gonna not remember to do that anyway. Anyway. Okay. Well, the mic's on now. So basically, in super short, because I don't feel like saying all that again, I want to try to help encourage between, in this case, Tunic, who's the most prolific arguer in our server, and the opposing members of the server. Again, like I said, none of them actually showed up to this call, and I kind of didn't expect that, even though I invited them. On these particular, okay. See, this is the problem. That's the problem. Like, that is the issue. Like, we can't communicate like that. And if we think it's funny, it's just because we're immature. But actually having effective communication on things, because what I see from my perspective is just conversation. I'll pop in here and there, amongst my, busier life, and I'll just see, I mean, you'll have some blocks of text where you're like, okay, there's something trying to be communicated here, and then there'll just be breaks in it. Just, wow, you're a racist. No, I'm not. You are a racist. No, I'm not. And it's just that for hours. And that's like, really, that's for the Christians, that is not an appropriate way to represent Christ and try to have good discussion, or at least exert any sort of wisdom. And for the non-Christian, of course, their standard is lower because they don't really have a biblical standard. But again, we want to be able to communicate to them so they understand what we're saying, not just so we understand what we're saying. We being Christians in general. Not that I really take Tunic's position on whatever he's talking about. But so that's the point here. It's kind of a lesson in that, and hopefully we can do that. Like I said before, when I was muted on stream, unfortunately, I'm not really having a specific contention here. I'm not really debating Tunic. I don't really know what I agree with and what I don't in this topic, because I haven't really studied. I did a brief study on things of the Jews and stuff, and my general position is that I'm not a replacement theologian. I tend to take a future Kingdom of Israel viewpoint, but I'm not. I don't claim to have that fully studied through in a way where I could argue it or even care to argue it. Also, I don't think it's a major thing to the gospel in a certain sense, but I think like it's being talked about a lot. It's now, and then anti-Semitism is thrown around because you present a view that might have a negative connotation or whatever, and then people just throw around these buzzwords, homophobe, racist, whatever. And I just think we should talk through it, and to Laser and Allen, who will, those are the two that come to mind, but I'm sure there's a few others who are on the opposing side of this. I just listen, because if this guy is truly anti-Semitic, we'll show that now. And if he's not, then please listen carefully. This will be exercise in trying to help you understand and listen carefully as to what people are actually saying, even if it seems different to what you think, and vice versa. So let's see what we can do here. Also, this will be an interesting break from the normal stuff we do each week. So let's see. Someone just sent something. I'm gonna look at my images and media. I don't really care to, but great. Okay, so let's see what we can do. Welcome to Zen, who's here and makes me happy. So I'm gonna say welcome to him. Let's start walking through this. Anyway, so Tunic, you messaged me a nice overview, so I want to go through each of these points and kind of see what you're saying. I asked Laser and Allen, I said it would be beneficial and nice if you guys could send me specific messages where you believe Tunic was being anti-Semitic or racist. I wish that they were sent, because then we could particularly deal with those texts, I guess. Because if that's not sent, I don't really know exactly what the contentions are. Now, they didn't send anything, and I think that's unfortunate. What that does make me feel like, though, is that in the specific sense, there may not be any sort of a very obvious contention. It makes me question how strong their disapprovals are, if they're just making a general disapproval because they don't understand Tunic's position. On the other side, I think Tunic communicates in a way which only sometimes is understood to his brain and nobody else's. So I think that that's a misunderstanding that's just, I see across the board, and that's why, Tunic won't communicate any other way than he does, and Laser and Allen only think a certain way, so they're therefore insults. So that's all the starting point. That's all the introduction to that. So let's just see where we go. So Tunic, the first thing you say here to me is you say, I said, and remember guys, we're thinking about the questions, is Tunic's perspective really anti-Semitic and racist, or is it just nuanced and different than the average position? That's the question, right? So let's think about this question as we listen, okay? You say the Jewish faith is anti-Christ, or was anti-Christic. I guess I would say it still is. But do you want to explain what you mean by that? So what are you saying when you say that?
I mean a few things. I think Jewish religious doctrine is anti-Christic in the sense that it's against Christ. But it's also anti-Christic in the sense that Judaism, from the Christian perspective, is the antithesis of the Christian perspective. It's the only religion which in Scripture is described as satanic and so on. And so I think it's in its purest form, even when it comes to Christian eschatology. Christian eschatology, in the traditional sense, obviously, you can call it replacement theory, we'd call it fulfillment theory. But
I think they're probably different, but yeah.
Our eschatology is based on the actions of those who rejected Christ, which is obviously the rabbinic Jews. And so things like sacrificing the red heifer to build the third temple, we believe, is the start of the coming of the Antichrist. So in that sense, Judaism is the religion that will bring forth the Antichrist. And so there's a dual meaning that I mean by antichristic.
Okay. So something I want to know is how would Judaism be any more antichristic than, say, Islam, if at all?
Right, because if just on an objective level, Judaism's treatments of the Christ are far, 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 far worse than Islam's. Islam has respect for Christ, even if they don't view him as God. They have respect for Christ. They call him the second greatest prophet, whereas Judaism says that he's boiling in a pot of excrement in hell. So
okay, but when Christ says, and this is a question for you, when Christ says, if you are not for me, you are against me, and creates only two sides, either the one that's for or the one that's against, why would you then create rankings or levels in which we would look at those different religions? Like, what I'm saying is that my viewpoint is, if you don't claim Christ as Lord, it is as bad to claim him as a prophet And that would be, to me, almost even worse, because you're almost offering this fake respect, because you're basically saying, oh, you're such a prophet, but you're not acknowledging who he is. That would be as bad as just saying that he was nobody, in my opinion, or at least according to what it seems to say in Scripture.
Right, and we don't ascribe like the Muslims have a Christic form, but it's not anti-Christic in the sense that it's not obstinately against the idea of the Christ. It hasn't built its entire foundation. I mean, Judaism exists. The religion of Judaism was founded whenever Christ was rejected. So I think it is, there's a certain historical significance to that fact, even if not theological. There is definitely, objectively, Judaism is more anti-Christic. Even if you look at it binarily, there's still other factors. I mean, the Bible doesn't mention that, for example, the God of false prophets is Satan, but it does mention that the God of the ones who reject the Messiah is Satan. So I think that there's a
I would say, again, I would say, because of the binary system Jesus purports, that Islam and Hinduism equally reject the Messiah. Because, like, if I say Jesus, if I were to say to you Jesus is only a prophet, and I love Jesus, he's a prophet, any meaningful Christian would say you do not love Jesus. You reject him.
Christ is the Messiah. They just do not believe he is of the divine essence. That's the distinction. So they do believe that he is the Messiah.
In what sense? Because I haven't heard any Muslim who would claim that he's the Messiah in the way the Old Testament would describe him as the Messiah, meaning like actually the one who would suffer for sins.
Well, they do still. Well, that, again, if there's certain ways you can look at that. I'm just saying, in Islamic theology, he is seen as the judge and the Messiah. So I'm speaking purely relatively from the perspective of Islam. I'm not examining this from the perspective. I'm saying that as a relative perspective from Judaism and Islam, one of them views Christ in a disproportionately higher, degree of respect than the other.
Interesting. This category is just odd to me, because I think it's absolutely disrespectful to call Christ a prophet and not bow the knee to him still. And there's no distinction between that and just calling him nobody. But relative to...
It's not that they call him nobody, right? They don't call him nobody. They say he's boiling in hell.
Which is what I meant by what I said. But I mean...
Right, so it's a different perspective. I don't know. I mean, you can obviously take the binary perspective, but I don't think that...
That's the one Jesus offers.
Well, right. But even then, he still offers that there's a distinction, right? So I still don't think that it's easy to just judge all things when it comes to Christ. Obviously, he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I think when it comes to salvation, there's a binary system. But when it comes to how you view the Messiah or our God, I do think that there is definitely a perspective of heart. I don't think that if, for example, you have two people and one lifts Christ as this, wonderful moral teacher and this, chosen person of God, and then the other says that he's boiling in hell, I think those two people will not be judged the same way, even though they both reject it. Although I do believe both will not be, inheriting eternal life, because there's one way to eternal life. But, you get the point. I think that when we're talking about it binarily, we're taking away some nuances between the two that I think you can't do accurately. Would the rich man in Matthew be judged the same way as the rejecter in John 6? As in the same way? What do you mean by that?
Well, what I'm saying is the rich man in Matthew acknowledges Jesus as good and comes seeking eternal life, and then won't bow the knee because he doesn't want to, he's disappointed. He doesn't want to give all his possessions away. The Jew in John 6 only ever was thinking selfishly about what they could get out of Jesus, and never acknowledged him as a good teacher or a Lord or even a way to eternal life to begin with.
I do not think that they will, when it comes to will they both be saved? No. Will they both be not saved? Yes. Normatively speaking, yes. Okay. However, I will say that it is not, I do not think that they will be judged in the same way, and I don't think the extent of their sin is not the same. I don't think sin is equal.
Well, I don't either. I'm saying that, like, in the sense of their anti-Christic response, you're saying that those are different.
I'm saying that one of them is, from our perspective as a faith, right? Like in Christian eschatology, Judaism is anti-Christic. Okay, Islam is not the same in Christian eschatology. Islam is a tool of the Antichrist. It's this broom. Okay, however, it in of itself is not the anti-Christic faith that will bring forth the Antichrist.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
All right. So, okay, that's enough on that. So conclusions. Here's my conclusion. Number one, I think, Tunic, you should take a little bit more of a humble attitude towards just speculations you have on this. I don't think that when it comes to your beliefs regarding the Jewish faith as more anti-Christic than, say, the Hindu one or the Muslim one, I don't think there's any like infallible truth basis to point to be like, I'm sure that this is how we should look at it. And I understand the point you're making. I'm not saying the points you're making are invalid, but I think they maybe should be said with a little bit less, not confidence, but just like, some carefulness. Like, hey, this is what I think because this is the kind of perspective I take. But it does come off in this particular case as if this is the way to look at it, and somehow I should be convinced of that, or someone should be, which might, again, the people you're communicating to when you're not talking to me and you're talking to, say, Laser, that attitude might come off in a way where they're going to conclude different things, even though, again, from this particular topic, you didn't say anything anti-Semitic. Like, obviously, conclusion obvious here that you're not saying that you hate individual Jews or you hate all Jewish people and want them to go to hell. You're simply saying that you find the belief of Judaism, like the faith of Judaism, extra anti-Christic compared to even, say, Islam. Now, I don't agree with that from the certain sense, but that disagreement is kind of unimportant to what we're looking at here. So at least from this first point, anything you've said regarding this, I don't think you can conclude as anti-Semitic, though I can see why someone like Laser or Alan might listen to you talk about this like this, especially the way you talk about it, and kind of make that conclusion from their perspective. You see what I'm saying? So I really encourage you to be more careful in that way, so that you kind of use the right words to make these kinds of thoughts or speculations, so that they come across in a way where you're making all the distinctions. So you're like, wait, I'm not saying I hate Jews. I'm saying that their particular religion is this particular belief, and so on and so forth.
Wait, I have a question. Sorry. When you say anti-Semitic, what do you exactly mean? Like, are you again ethnic Jews, or just the religion? Because that I don't know, that word has such broad meaning. Like, are you talking about ethnic?
That's a good question. I think that anti-Semitism in any meaningful way, and probably the way Laser or Alan will be using it, though I can't assume, in my opinion, it can only be used meaningfully when talked about any sort of hate for the Jews that involves personal hate. It can't just talk about religious hate, because in a certain sense, Christians are supposed to hate false prophets and false prophecy and false idolatry. I should hate the beliefs of Islam and Jewish and these other faiths because they oppose the true Christ. But obviously, I don't hate the people of Islam. I want to evangelize them. I want them to be saved, so on and so forth. And so anti-Semitism in any meaningful way that we should talk about it would include some sort of personal hate, which I believe from the conversation, and Tunic can speak to this, I believe from the conversations I've been seeing in the server, it would seem to me that there is assumed some kind of personal hate for Jews because Tunic has a religious or distaste for the false prophecy or the disrespect of Christ that comes from the religion and the religious belief. Am I correct on that, Tunic?
Yes, but I also have a distaste because, again, I do believe that my eschatology, Jews play a very, very big negative role in my eschatology. So it's not so simple as it's just I treat it the same as any other religion. Right. I think whenever you're talking about in the sense that it does not accept my God, yes, it's equal to all other religions. But in the sense of its role in my own faith, I think that it is far more significant, if that makes sense, than say Islam is. Okay. And then so that's what we're going to hopefully unpack on the rest of these points. Because I want to see where those significances lie. Because the point is, right.
I mean, part of the point is, do we really need to keep calling each other hateful in the server, or do we need to just communicate better, and hopefully figuring that out? And this is, again, this is just an exercise. Like, when you guys listen to this should just be, this in and of itself, the example of this is a lesson, how we communicate and ask good questions so we can understand what people actually are saying and not what we think they are saying, so that we can just insult them. Especially for the people in this call who are Christians. I mean, this is just how we need to be acting to honor God. Anyway, so on to the next point. Again, nothing so far here that can be identified as anti-Semitic in the personal sense. But I can see, again, Tunic, you got to be careful how you communicate, because do you genuinely think that Laser or Alan, and not to say negative about them as people, but do you genuinely think them, from their perspective, really understand all the things that you explain to them and the way you explain it?
No.
And
no,
so,
certainly not.
and
I think so to an extent.
I don't know if
all
I
right,
have
so please don't. Whoever did that, to stop. But glowing, please mute. Thanks.
Okay,
so yeah, and so like just some wisdom exerted, like, and that's where I think a heart of love needs to be remembered for the people in the server who take an opposing position, or an atheistic one, or things like that. Like that heart of love is what drives us to desire to communicate in a way where we want them to understand. Instead of desire them to not understand or not care, which I think is the usually problem, not care if they fully understand exactly what we're saying. That's why, like, you'll see in some of my responses, like my response to a wait today, that it was like 12 minutes. I was very, very careful to respond in a way where I could be sure that it was very much understood. Good mic, thanks. Oh no, that was probably the other guy with the bad mic. That it was said in words that a wait would understand, because I know he's coming from a different position. Anyway, so the next thing you say, and this one's very fascinating, you said, I wouldn't loan to someone of the Jewish faith. Now, what is this?
Right. So this is because in the Jewish faith, usury, which is the practice of interest, right, is permitted. Okay, which means that Jews are allowed to charge interest on Gentiles, okay, on the goyim, and not on their own people of their own ethnicity. Okay, and so the idea is that this is historically an issue, because what happens is that these Christian monarchies, even Catholic and Protestant monarchies in Europe, there was such an influx of Jews that eventually Jews ended up monopolizing European banks, because they were the only ones who could charge interest on loans and therefore make money in banking. Okay, and so the idea is that from their own religion, right, permits them to make money off of a loan to me, okay, whereas a Christian, and this is the same way, right, it's really, what I mean by this is like the Jewish banking system, okay, which is obviously a different thing, okay. In let's say a country like, it's a Christian country, okay, so like in many small towns in Greece and so on, they don't charge usury at all. It's illegal. Okay, because
wait, what is usury as opposed to? Can you separate? Can you make a distinction for everybody? So, is usury distinct from the general types of interest that maybe say I would experience when going to a loan on a house, or interest on a credit card payment or something? Like, do we have difference here?
No, it is not any different. And
so if it's not any different, I mean, we kind of all live through this. Like, I'm a Christian, and I certainly would charge interest on a loan.
Well, of course, but again, the means. Well, again, the Christian faith does not permit that. Okay,
does
Christian
it?
Faith has historically, it has not. No, it does not. I mean, historically, again, obviously, not all laws of the faith are written in the scriptures, but historically,
okay, so it's not a scriptural law. Okay.
It has been treated as theft by every major tradition. Even Protestants up until the 20th century, they were not permitted to enact usury because it was seen as theft. So.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I guess that would be a different type of study. But I think interest is just general business. Like, if I loan to someone personally, I probably wouldn't charge interest. But if I'm doing business, like the appropriate running my own business of some type, I mean, then I think interest is just a part of the dealings. I mean, you can't make money without interest.
Well, yeah, but again, that idea didn't exist until Jews emerged from the ghettos in Europe and then made that a reality.
So you're saying there was no sense of interest in any sense until the Jews in the ghetto?
Not in Christian society, no.
Not in Christian society. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'd have to look into that.
And so the idea is that it's not even so much about like, oh, it's a personal. It's more like a rhetorical statement that I'm rejecting the idea or the Jewish idea and conception of usury. And so for that reason, I do not want to loan to somebody that religiously thinks they're allowed to steal from me via usury. Okay. In comparison to somewhere of somebody of my own religion who ideally does not think that.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. Again, like you said, it's not like in the scripture, so I guess the argument for it would just be a different type, and that's fine. I mean, I don't know what I really think about that, but at least for people who are trying to understand where Tunic is coming from, the idea of charging interest is in tradition, not a part of the Christian faith. So he is at odds with, I guess, where historically charging interest seemed to come back into the mainstream, at least by means of the Jews, and so he's at odds with that.
In the modern day, Jews charge more interest on Gentiles than they do other Jews, right? So if you go to any major bank,
isn't that in Leviticus though, or am I just
in what
isn't that in the law on that, or is that not?
I don't remember. I've just read the fathers.
But I will point out that if that is true, that their reason for doing that is, while I'm not necessarily in agreement with them doing that, is to be expected, because they're adhering to a lifestyle that it comports only with traditional, not just scriptural, but traditional and scriptural Old Testament orthodoxy. So their manner of living would be expected to have those types of things. I mean, we can dislike it, but I mean, like, that's just where they're at.
Right. And so within the Talmud, and which is still observed by religious Jews, you'll notice that religious Jews who privately own banks, obviously this isn't true on the scale of major, multinational banks and like statewide banks. They just don't. Obviously, the corporation is too big to effectively practice this. However, private companies, especially in places like Israel, charge goyim, which is obviously Gentiles. They charge them interest, but they do not charge fellow Jews interest, which I also see as problematic.
Okay.
So there's a certain discrimination based on race that they do. Which is, I mean, the entire Talmud outlines this difference, right? Like the religion is inherently an ethnic religion. It views the people of the religion, of the ethnicity, as a higher form of person than the ones who are not.
And which is problematic and not scriptural. But so when you say you wouldn't loan to somebody of the Jewish faith, I mean, again, to clarify, this is not a personal, like, I wouldn't give money to someone who's Jewish. It's more of like I wouldn't give money into the system, the banking system of the Jewish people, or I wouldn't do loans that operate on the laws of the Jewish faith, the current Jewish faith loan laws.
It's a self-preservation state.
Okay, yes. Now I want to point out that if you say it like this, the way you messaged it to me and how you probably would message it to Laser in a conversation and how you've explained it are very different. And so I want to point out both to, if someone like Laser ever listens, and to Tunic, like, this is important to make these distinctions. It's not I hate Jews, I'd never give them money. No, it's like, I don't want to put my money into a system which I believe is dishonest and untrustworthy because of the way they don't use equal scales in charging interest, or the way I feel about interest, and I don't believe that it's a way that Christians should be interacting. And that is a way different thing. It's also very much not anti-Semitic, right? But it might feel anti-Semitic if you say something like, I wouldn't loan to somebody of the Jewish faith, because what that sounds like to some people is, if someone defines as a Jew, Tunic would never give that person money. And that's like, again, that's why we have to be careful in our speaking. So hopefully we take that to heart. But thanks for explaining that. Okay, so here's the next one. I hate the state of Israel more than any other on earth. Now, I mean, let's give that one a go.
Right. So I hate the state of Israel not only because they're the largest persecutors of Orthodox Christians in the world. It is. I don't like the state. Well, because I've been there.
Can you talk about the persecution? So what's going on there? Yeah. I'm assuming by Orthodox you're talking about Eastern Orthodox people and churches and like people who are really seeking after the Lord, and at least some of them might be. And they're responding to. It's a persecution that responds to what? It responds to their choice to not rescind the gospel and who Christ is.
Right. So let me I'll get a few things out.
Sure.
First, we can take a look at the Prophet Elias church bombing right, which is attributed to ISIS, and it was a member of the Islamic State that did it. However, the Syrian faction, specifically the Damascene, okay, which is the Damascus faction of the IS, the Islamic State, is funded by Mossad, well funded, because they serve. It's sort of like an enemy of my enemy thing, right? So ISIS is very hostile to Shia groups, which is Israel's primary enemy. So like Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis are all Shia Muslims, right? And so the idea is that Israel has historically funded ISIS as a means to destabilize Shia populations so that their interests would be served, right? And so we know that certain weapons used in that IS attack, the Islamic State attack on the Prophet Elias Church, which killed 22 people and injured like 150 more, okay? We know that that attack was done via Israeli funding, okay? So that we'd call it a minor case, okay? Second, Israel, under multiple circumstances, has attempted to ban the Bible from Israel, like sale of the Bible, like full stop. They've attempted to ban it. And they've obviously been shut down. They're a democratic country, so that did not go through. But the far-right Israelis want to get rid of the gospel from Israel. Another few important circumstances is that, and I'll give three concerning Orthodox Christians that are very recent, within a month, okay? First of all, the bombing and siege and sacking of the village of, I forget, starts with the T, in the West Bank. And it was a almost entirely Christian community. Eastern Orthodox, obviously, they're Antiochian Christians, or Jerusalem, from the Patriarchate in Jerusalem. And these Christians, they burned their homes, okay, expelled all of them, killed like 21, 22. They burnt their church down and vandalized it, and all the icons within it, which, even if you don't agree with that, obviously, spray painting a Star of David on the face of Christ is something that I assume most Christians will not.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'm not an iconographist, I would certainly not do that to you. I would be disrespectful in many ways. And you can be sure. Sorry to cut in. You can be sure that the person who spray painted a star on Jesus's face was not doing it as a protest against iconography as a doctrine. It was a direct hate on who Christ is. So that would change very much the nature of that action.
Mm-hmm. And so again, this entire church was sacked and vandalized by IDF soldiers, right? And the clergy of the church, even again, if you don't believe that, they're maybe not the right Christians, they, beating up elderly and priests and nuns is not something that you want to be doing.
No, it is not. No, it is not. I agree.
That city is still not able to be inhabited. It happened like a month ago. It's completely sacked. It will be turned into a Jewish town. So again, the last remaining Christian settlement in the West Bank that was super majority Christian. Another instance very recently is that the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, which is obviously it's an institution, okay, and they have bank accounts and things so they can fund Christianity in the region. Israel froze their bank accounts, so they can't fund their churches, they cannot pay bills, and so something like 90% of the churches in Israel will be forced to close as a result. And this is because they say, quote, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem supports Hamas. And what they mean by that is the Patriarchate of Jerusalem said that the murder of Gazan people and the leveling of Gaza is a genocide. And so that was their claim, and then they get their bank accounts frozen. Third instance would be very, very recently, is that currently Israel issued an evacuation notice out of Gaza City, which is where all the Christians in Gaza are left remaining, because they plan to siege it. Okay, this is the place where a church built in 400 A.D. Saint Porphyrios Orthodox Church, which was bombed about a year ago. The visitor center of that was bombed, killing a few people, and that church will likely be destroyed again, 400 AD. I mean, it's almost impressive how Israel has done more damage to the Christian infrastructure in the region in 75 years as Muslim rule has done in well over 1,000. But again, that's an aside. And then again, some damage again has also been caused to the Catholic, the Holy Name Catholic Church. And even though I'm not Catholic, I obviously have empathy for Catholic Christians in the region. And so, and that killed 3 people. It was a tank shell that was aimed at the cross, and they say it was accidental. Like, no, it was aimed at the cross. You shot the tank. And so now the patriarch, the Catholic Patriarch of Jerusalem, which is a cardinal, and then the Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem have refused to evacuate the city because doing so would almost ensure the death of many, many elderly and young people because they're starving, like they're in a famine. And so they cannot leave without taking major loss. And so basically major Israeli news sources have said, well, now it's their fault if they get bombed and die. It's their fault because they're not evacuating, the land they've been in for 2,000 years. So I just think that, again, Israel has repeatedly shown that it is very, very hostile to apostolic Christianity.
No.
However, you will notice Israel is very encouraging of a lot of evangelical circles, which are they're Zionist Christians, this Christian study of Christian Zionism, which originated with the Scofield Study Bible and Darby and all of his theology with the dispensationalism. And so they're promoting that in Israel and giving out this message that these apostolic Christians are all Hamas supporters and all these crazy things. And so again, I just think that as the state of Israel goes, it is easily the most hostile currently to Orthodox Christians in the world. I think it's the most hostile to people. Right, one of the, if not the most hostile to people in the world right now. I think that it's a total ethno state, and it's genocidal.
The funny thing is, and I'll jump in now. Thanks, Tunic. The funny thing about what you just said there is that a true like a John MacArthur dispensationalist, should receive the same amount of hate as the Orthodox, because the John MacArthur type, and I say John MacArthur just because his doctrine. I think there's a lot of Zionists or Christian Zionists who have very loose position, and it can be, I don't think it's coming across as hardline and gospel as say certain people like the way John might have taught it. Like, he would teach that any Jew who doesn't bow the knee to Christ is as much under God's wrath as you would say, and so there shouldn't be any difference in the words of someone, say, like the way John would represent dispensationalism, which is basically that. And I don't think he was fully dispensational. He was what a lot of people call a very soft dispensationalist.
Yeah, super similar.
Yeah, and where he would attest himself to a lot of those ideas, but he wasn't hard in that. He kind of was just, very premillennialist is probably the farthest I'd go. But the point is like, John would teach that unless the redeeming of the Jewish kingdom, the redeeming of the kingdom of Israel, the coming of that kingdom, and the reinstatement, that is all absolutely divorced from the Jew who does not bow the knee to God. Right? The Jew that doesn't believe what is basically an Orthodox gospel, and I say basically, Tunic, is as far outside of the John MacArthur premillennial Jewish kingdom as outside of the replacement theology church of the Orthodox, right? And so sorry, hopefully you understood exactly what I meant there. So it is very odd, and that makes me think that a lot of evangelical Christian Zionism is just loose and is just saying, oh wow, the Jews are going to be all right. God's gonna make it okay for you guys. But that's not really what a true person who finds the restoration of Israel as a real event, like the true careful studier, that's not really what they're saying either. So I find that interesting. I think it's just, you have a group of people that are opposed to the gospel. Now, a lot of groups of people are opposed to the gospel, right? And everybody is going to respond with their opposition. In various ways. Now, the Jew is obviously going to only support the ones who might be like very soft Christian Zionists, and in any other way oppose the gospel, just like anyone else from their own area would oppose the gospel. I mean, like you move over to countries in the Islam world, and there are equal stories, not the same type, but there are persecutions, there are killings. There are a lot of places where you can't believe the gospel. And so when we go back to your previous comment here, and I want to point out something here, anyone right, who would watch the engagement of conversation between Tunic and Laser, and I know a lot of people in this call are here because they watch it, I guess, would not have gathered anything that you just said. None of it. Everything that you just said, I find interesting, I didn't know, and I find important. Right? There is persecution happening. There are people are against Christ in the world. The general system of the world is anti-Christic in the general sense, and every group is doing various things to put Christians down. In this Western culture, they're doing it in a cultural sense. They're trying to be progressive, right? And that is slowly edging away at Christians and traditional truth, right? That's one way of doing it. In the world of Islam, there is just outright persecution. I'm not saying everybody. I'm not saying Islam people are bad. No, I'm saying there is real persecution there. There is real persecution in Israel. You go over to places like China and Japan, there is outright blatant persecution of Christians, and a lot of those people have to church in hiding. But you see, with all the detail behind that Tunic shares in this call that is definitely not shared or communicated well in the arguments day to day, you can see that there is a reason to be upset with some of the actions of the Jewish state or the Jewish of the Israel state and some of the people. Okay, but I think that if you say I hate the state of Israel more than any other on earth, some people, and you just leave it at that, a lot of people are going to hear, wow, that he just hates Jews. But and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe you just hate all individual Jews, but it seems like you're not saying here you hate all individual Jews. It seems like you're saying you hate, and rightly so, the persecutive opposition to Christ's actions that a lot of the Israel state and its, I guess, its leaders are taking against Christians, which are just blatantly disrespectful.
Right, and I should also mention that I've been to Israel because in Norway, the way we do school, right, we have like ages 16 to 18, 19, you basically specialize, right? So it's kind of like college, but not really. But again, so I did politics, and so we did a few trips to the Middle East, okay? And so we went to Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. And we saw on multiple occasions in Jerusalem, like groups of Orthodox or Catholic clergy being spit on by children, right, in Israel,
bad.
like Jewish children. And so I just think that even as a personal anecdote, I think that I've kind of experienced that almost firsthand. Again, I've never felt so much opposition to one group. Israel just isn't portrayed that way in the West, and so
yeah, it's not. I mean, though I will say the same with the Islam countries and things like that. Again, there's good in identifying that not all individuals are doing that, but sometimes we've overcorrected and pretended like it's not happening at all anymore, and it certainly is. I want to point out two things. Number one, to the Lasers and Allens out there, if you want to have issue with the things that Tunic has said so far, you need to do so on the level of the facts, or at least the information he's presented as facts, right? You need to actually be able to discuss these events and their happenings and argue on that level. Or and Tunic needs to present his ideas on this level, or just not talk about them and waste all the space in the general chat. Right. These are where the arguments need to happen if you actually care about discussing things of the state of Israel. If not, don't talk, because all you're doing is you're kind of just spreading immature, insulting, supposedly anti-Semitic behavior. Now, here's the other thing. Now, and hopefully we're picking up this lesson. Don't be like Joe. Don't be like Joe, because even as he's talking now, is just not a useful way to talk about these things. So don't do that, because that is just not a good way to speak. And I mean, when we talk about things at least Tunic got on the phone here today and he's being serious about things that are happening. I would be mad too if I had recently heard stories about Jewish people doing things that resulted in the disrespect of the real Christ. Okay. And when you just say things like, well, Jews caused genocide, what you're saying to me is, I don't know anything and I don't like to study, but I like to be angry. That's what you're saying to me. And I just don't, I have zero respect for that. My respect for Tunic it's like phases of the moon. It kind of wanes and waxes day to day, depending on the kind of the mood he's in and the disposition he's in. So right now it's pretty good, because I'm he's explaining things and these are very important things and he's treating them seriously. And then he'll go in and he'll say a bunch of curse words when he's supposed to moderate the server, and I'll be like, oh, come on, dude. But at least there's some interaction on the right level, and this is where we need to be working towards. If you guys are going to be in this server and want to see this server grow in a Christian way, then we want to act in a way that makes us, that's manly. family that's of men, and like that's not speaking to each other like children. Okay, it's manliness is not just hitting the gym. It's like, it's also about how we speak to each other and how we treat each other like people, even if we disagree. All right. Savior says Laser and Allen are willfully ignorant and will find anything to spin narrative. Sorry, I'm going to read that again because I like it. Laser and Allen are willfully ignorant and will find anything to spin the narrative to make Tunic or anyone else they disagree with look bad. Savior's ping me. So do I agree with that? In a sense, I do. I think Allen's not as bad. I think Laser does do that. I'm not saying he doesn't do that. What I'm saying is that doesn't excuse the way you guys behave, right? Especially if you guys are standing before Christ, and as it says in Matthew 12, will account for every word you say on the day of judgment. I think you should take seriously how you talk, no matter what other people are doing. And I agree. I think Laser does do that because I do think there are people, him and people like him, they don't really care about having conversation, which then the Christian response is, wow, seems like those people don't actually care about conversation. I'm not going to cast my pearls before swine or waste my time with fools, and let's move on. There is some wisdom to be exerted that I rarely see exerted. So it still falls equally on you and as on them when those conversations happen. So thanks for sharing that. So, okay, so that's where I'm at. I think good stuff so far. Thanks for explaining all that. And guys, take this stuff seriously. I think what Tunic's saying is to be prayed for and to be considered, because there is persecution all over the world, and the Christ is in full opposition. It's just that we don't always experience it over here in America because in our little corners of the world, because there's a lot of there's some pockets of tolerance, and then like the intolerance is more verbal and idealistic than it is actually like, hey, I'm going to ruin your house if you believe Christ. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I believe they're not here because they don't care that much, or it's either they don't care that much or they do care, but they know that in a situation like this where I'm on the mic or Tunic's on the mic, that they're probably not going to be able to do as well. That's why a lot of people will argue on places like Twitter or Reddit, but they will not get on the mic and clash. They will not go back and forth and ask questions and answer questions because they know they can't deal with that. But anyway, okay, moving on. And then you say, I don't think the Holocaust number was accurate. So, I mean, can you just make this one brief? I just want to say this about this. That to me seems like more of a history claim, and that's a something that, I mean, I don't really have an opinion on. I don't know all the conspiracies on that. But again, I would just say right off the bat, is that inherently an anti-Semitic claim? It's certainly an extreme and odd one, but I mean, again, Tunic, what do you want to say about that?
Right. So again, that is a historical claim, but I think that it is not. When it comes to something like that, it is objectively the most controlled historical narrative to ever exist, and it's also the biggest industry around a historical narrative to ever exist. And so, obviously, there's going to be some kind of there's an incentive for deception in that case. However, there's enough evidence, and I won't list it now, but I mean, when I'm talking enough, I mean books and books and books and books of evidence against it. And anytime you have that level of evidential opposition, I think that it is reasonable to question a claim like that, even though it's like, even the fact that it's even being discussed, like any other claim. Like if I claim like, oh, I don't think Napoleon, I don't think his conquests were as extensive as the history books say they were. Something like, nobody cares. But the problem is that this is such a virtue signaled, browbeaten number that it's been so insanely ingrained into our like morality as a culture that it sounds crazy to even question it. And so that's why I'm just saying that there's historical evidence that shows that it is not what they say it is, and there's enough of that evidence that makes me say that it is likely not that number. Okay,
so do you think there still was a Holocaust of some number?
Yes. Of course.
Do you think that's and let's hit this stuff. But like, would you think that someone like Hitler can be called a moral leader?
It depends on what sense you're talking about it. When
I'm talking about
moral in his action, no. Although I think that many of the ideologies that were professed by the German state in the 30s were what we would call Christian in a sense, but the problem is he made it such a corruption of this Christian value that I think it completely ruined everything. So I would say no, he's not moral. However, I will say that as a system, he was professing a society which is not near the level of degeneracy that ours is, or the existing society was at the time. It's like banning things like pornography and homosexuality and things like this.
No,
right?
and that's fine. But okay, so could you see why an opinion like that, which is extremely specific and complicated, would not make any sense or not fly well when you say it to someone like Laser? Can you understand why that might be a hard one to pass by someone like him and then have a good conversation? Yeah. I mean, so then why do we do it? Because I mean, I understand what you're saying. I understand the nuances of what you're saying because I'm really listening. I get it. And I obviously, so I understand that you're not really saying that he was at any sorts a Christian or godly person, but the problems with the society he was proposing did not really even begin on the problems that continue in our culture when it comes to the different sins that I understand. I understand all that, and that would be a different type of discussion. And in your logical evaluation, I think sometimes it gets lost that you still would look at Hitler and call him an evil person and a false prophet as a leader. I've seen a lot of clips. I don't know, Gabe sent me a bunch of stuff where, some of his translated speech talk about God and who God is and blah, blah, blah. And obviously he was using that to get people to follow him, not because he believed in that God. And so we have to identify him as evil. And we have to identify him as a false prophet. And Tunic, would you identify him as those things?
It depends on what you mean by false prophet.
False prophet, the general term meaning misusing the things, the words of God, misrepresenting God.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
okay.
I will say that as far as what he was representing charismatically, or like the whole idea of this, and it's almost like comparable to like the America first. It was almost like this Germany first. We really need to emphasize our culture and things like this. I would agree with things like that. Like the whole, cultural nationalism, I think is a very important thing to a nation. But other than that, I think that definitely he did misuse the aspects of the Christian religion. I think he was just peddling on that. I mean, because he was very obviously, he was kind of obsessed with paganism and all these things. So I wouldn't.
Yeah, he was his worldview was Darwinistic. It was not Christian. Christianity was used. He did not actually believe some of the things he said. I mean, a lot of those were leadership ploys, I'd say. But again, what you're saying to me, I understand for the most part, and we have to understand. Joe, Hitler was a social Darwinist. Like he genuinely, come on. But what I want to point out is that again, communicating that to someone who you can't even say one sentence without getting insulted by that person in the server, that would be Laser and Friends, and vice versa. Some wisdom should tell you that any words like that are not gonna be received logically the way you're saying them. And again, some wisdom and discretion on who we want to talk about the nuances of Hitler with. But I think that again, for the other side, if they're listening, Hitler is being identified here as someone who's evil and who is, as we made the distinction, still a false prophet in a lot of senses, misusing the things of the Christian faith and doing evil, even if he believes the Holocaust number is lower and blah, 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 and all these various details. There's nothing being positive being said about Hitler as far as a moral or a Christian sense, or devoiding him of the evil he did accomplish. So, and those distinctions need to be made. That doesn't again, there's nothing anti-Semitic per se about what Tunic says. I think it's just, again, the attitude that comes off when talking about these things can give off that vibe. So again, careful on both sides. That's what we're saying. We're making distinctions here, and I'm hoping that there are some people who are listening who are learning here. All right, moving on. Something about the Zion. I'm going to skip the thing about the Zionist Council because honestly, I don't even care right now. Unless you really want to talk about that. There's so many things you said here.
Well, they talk about that whenever it's like, they attribute it to me like, I blame the Jews for everything. I just think that they have a disproportionate role in major societal failures is really all I'm saying. And almost all of that has its origins in the Zionist Council. Like, for example, the American participation in World War I was a Zionist thing. Our participation in World War II was a Zionist thing. Our alliance with the Soviet communists was Zionist thing. Abortion is a Zionist thing. Most of liberalism is a Zionist thing. Prevalence of LGBTQ in the United States is a Zionist thing. I mean,
it's also
all those
very
things.
prevalent over there in the Israel state, LGBTQ.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The gayest city in the world is Tel Aviv.
Yeah. So, I mean, and see these things, again, to the other side here, and I guess to Tunic's side for these other people, when you argue about these things, you need to argue on this level. You need to actually discuss these details. Okay, so if he says, you know, if someone says the Zionist Council holds a lot of influence and they were the cause of abortion or some sort of influence on abortion or whatever you're saying, then you need to speak on that level. Okay, so what are the details? What are the facts? Why do you say that? And actually have some back and forth on that, and not just say, oh my gosh, wow, you must hate Jews, because that just shows that you're not listening. But again, like it's kind of a denunciation of both sides because of the way you guys have been communicating. Again, to Tunic, I'm just going to remind people that are Tunic or like Tunic that, I mean, let's choose who we talk about these things to. Is Laser really the guy to talk about your views on the Zionist Council with? Is that really the guy? And I think you know the answer to that. And so, again, discretion. You said most social movements I hate are bolstered by, okay, you already talked about this, originate in ethnic Jews around the world. And again, that these simple statements that you sent me, if I didn't realize that you actually had thought processes behind them and I was just sent at random these simple statements, I might be inclined to think that you were anti-Semitic. Because you're making claims that are unexplained. And they can sound very anti-Semitic, or they can sound at least very biased in their thinking, when it's really you're coming up with simpler positions based upon a lot of details and facts that you're studying, that if you wanted to argue them would have to be argued on the level of those facts. V says, Laser, you need to stand your base. You're being talked about. There's nothing for him to really do here, V. This is not really I mean, he could come in here and debate these things, but I guarantee you that Laser, the things that Tunic has been actually talking about on the more detailed level are absolutely not being studied by Laser consistently. So, because if he was, then he would have been talking about these details on this level in all those conversations. And so I'm really talking more in general about how everybody should be choosing their battles and choosing how to speak, and not so that we don't come into the server and just see two people who are on completely different planes of thinking. And I mean that just based on the way that their perspective on the world and their studying, talking about something that they're both not even near in wavelength on. It's not even like two different colors of light. It's like just completely different wavelengths. They're not even in the same universe. So, I mean, what could Laser say? Unless he's like, oh, wow, I actually studied all that Zionist stuff, and here's my thoughts. So if that's what he's got, then great. Then I would ask, why was not always what was going on? Okay, so you say, now on to racism. You say, I said American black culture. And obviously, in this racist thing, obviously the things being continuously put at Tunic and being spammed over and over again in the server is Tunic is racist, Tunic is racist. Okay, well, if he's a racist, then it will be able to be easily seen in his answers to these questions. And if I believe he was, I would tell you I think he is. So let's find out. Let's find out if he's a racist by listening. I said American black culture is a negative and harmful culture. Okay, so let's talk about that. Now, before you even respond, I am going to tell you right now, to all sides listening, my roommate at college was, well, I guess still is black. One of my great friends from college. We had a lot of good times together. And he's talked to me about black culture, and he has said to me that he believes that culture has harmful and negative things in it. He's not saying he hates black people, but what he is saying is that he sees things in that culture. Now, sometimes he blames society and the culture being a response to the societal position of blacks, and then therefore the result. And sometimes he just blames the way the culture has kind of evolved, especially with the progressivist movements and things like that. But he has pointed out that there are harmful things in that culture, and it's not a hatred of an individual people.
Right.
And but under Tunic, just to point that out, so that we're thinking.
Right. So I think that, my 2 cents on the whole thing is that inherently, and no matter how you cut it, culture is always going to be tied to race, because culture is passed down, right? It's passed down to a family, and that's just how it works. Okay. And so whenever like they're like, well, maybe it's just like this socioeconomic group, and you can say, well, sure, but that doesn't really explain, like, even adjusting for socioeconomic class, it still doesn't match up. And I think that the problem is that you have instances, okay, of this very, very hostile, violent, almost degenerate culture among a lot of Black Americans, and obviously it's not even close to all. I'd say it's probably a slim majority. Okay, what happens is that, again, especially in lower socioeconomic areas, these ideals of this culture are built, and so what ends up happening is you have crazy statistics like or like young black men have a higher murder rate per capita than all other groups, male and female combined into one. Okay, which is just a crazy statistic to even conceptualize. Like, it's a lot. It's a huge issue. And then even things such as abortion is a very, very prevalent thing among Black culture. It comes to things like drug addiction and alcohol abuse is higher per capita. If you look at, again, attacks from Blacks to white people is per capita 41 times more common than from the reverse of attacks from white people to Black people. And so I just think that the issue is that you have this long-standing culture, and whether it be, I won't even argue the origin. I'm not super duper educated on the origin. I'm really just talking about, from a very realist, perspective of how it is now. I think that it's very problematic, and so I do reject the trope that for somehow we have to encourage this culture.
Okay, so hang on. So when you're talking about this culture, are you going to attribute the nature of this culture to their skin color? Or are you going to, as in only people with Black skin can fall into this culture? Would you attribute it to the, and this is probably what I would attribute it to if you wanted to come up with a thought about the culture, the nature of the culture, I guess, back in Africa, and the kind of if you go far back enough, the pagan worships and the tribalism and things like that occurred way back then, and kind of, is that more how you're attributing this?
Right. So again, I will say that it is slimly, if at all, genetic. Okay, and so I think that the problem is that it's partly influenced by that. I think a lot of the problems in Africa come from there is a cultural difference here. For example, like, Africans don't naturally have a concept of distant future.
I'm tired of Joe. I'm just going to time him out for an hour.
That's one example of something that's different. However, I think it could be affected. Obviously it could be passed down to any sort of race. If you have like a white man that is kind of adopted into this culture and then raises a kid, or
I'll do 10 minutes. Take a 10-minute break, Joe. Thanks.
A lot of it is a very, it's often a fatherless culture, but still in the same sense, I think it is not caused by the skin color, although it does correlate very strongly to it.
And correlation isn't causation, and you would probably be most of all to know that. So what I'm hearing you say is that really what I feel like is to be heard to be said is that we're addressing a culture of which it could have been any skin color in theory that has that culture, but we're talking more about the actual culture in question and its nature, and not about the particular people and their color of skin.
Yeah, it just happens to be.
Yes, right, exactly. And that distinction is important, because that means this is born out of a critique on their culture, which is a historical thing that has nothing to do with skin color. It's just this time-based thing of white. There could have been a group of white people with that issue, or Asian people, and there are problems with all those cultures too that can be easily pointed out. And I just, all right, I'll get to saviors in a second. I just, again, for the other side that's listening, clearly, if you take the nuance in full, this is not someone who actually is just bigoted, uninformed, racially hating people. If you listen to all of it, there's a lot of extreme interesting things to be thought about. And again, if you want to respond to it or you disagree with it, you have to respond on the level of the critiques being made, which is on the details and the history of the culture and how it came to be, and devoid of the skin color of the people. But again, that doesn't there is nothing logically racist about that. He didn't say, well, their skin's black, so they act like this. That is not being said. The correlation is only because of the happenstance of the culture, which is based off a grouping of people over time, really, not really the way they look. And they just happen to have dark skin in this case.
Right, but even then, I think that even in America, I think even when it comes to racism, I think that racism on the account of like just skin color, I think that's exceedingly rare. Right, I think that's very rarely the source of any sort of distaste for a people group or an ethnic group, and so I think that the issue is that you have things like, for example, like I will, if I'm walking at night, okay, I'm obviously just on a basis of pattern recognition, because I know the statistics show that I'm less safe walking by a young black man than I am a young white man. Like, it's just objective. That is objectively what is true. And so there's an extent of, our brains, which are as a process of natural selection, you could say, or by God, are engineered to use pattern recognition as a survival method. Okay. And so I think that I think that the problem is that people like Laser and Allen, they so vehemently reject this idea of pattern recognition. And the problem is that they believe that we generalize, like we're overgeneralizing, right? When we speak of people like this, like if I say that, black people are disproportionately violent in America, I'm obviously not speaking to all people. Okay. Yeah. I'm speaking to an average. And so I think that there's I think there's just an overall difference that when it comes from leftism, they get this very absolutist view on what occurs. And I think that
because the overcorrection is basically, it's kind of like with the Islam thing, where it used to be, the problem used to be people being like, all Muslims are bad, all Muslims are 9/11, and then the overcorrection is, well, no Muslims are bad, and no Muslims ever do anything bad or persecute anybody. And the thing is, like, okay, well, that's, both of those are just ridiculous thoughts, because all people aren't always persecuting and killing people or being terrorists, and no people are not being terrorists. So I mean, why are we saying either, basically, or trying to imply either with our worldview? That's true. But again, I just have to point out, I mean, Tunic, I genuinely believe the only person, and maybe I'm wrong by one or two people, but the only person who genuinely grasped the fullness of what you just said in the last 10 minutes is me. And you think this is the topic to argue with Laser about? I mean, come on, man. Just again, exert some wisdom. I mean, your group of friends in this call, I guarantee you most of them could not actually explain what you just said even back to you just now.
Right. And I should also mention that, and I voiced kind of like, I would describe myself personally as almost like, I don't want to say like, I don't think that being colorblind is really an accurate or truthful position when it comes to the question of race. I think I'm definitely a race realist. I think there's real and prevalent disparities and genetic differences between different races. And so I think there is definitely I think there is a racial origin, right, in these problems. Like, again, I don't. Well, I mean,
would you acknowledge that in the fullness of history, we all came from two people? Do you acknowledge that Adam and Eve origin, or do you think we just?
Well, I believe in an allegory, so I don't really. I believe that I think that we were evolved as, like, I think that race did come from a certain natural selection and evolution, because I believe it's a tool of God, personally.
Okay, interesting. Yes. So I will say there is a distinction to be understood there in the conversation. So someone like myself, and again, I'm not necessarily a 6-day creationist, though I could become one. I still would have to put more study into that, and I'm open to the position. I do believe we came from Adam and Eve. I believe when the Bible says that and speaks about that, and of course then the flood happened, and so it basically restarted with Noah and his family. I believe we all stem from that one background of a few people, which means that races are really, effects of change over time and region and different genetical separations and whatever, than they are actual differences. I mean, and so like... There's nothing.
The point I'm trying to make is that you have, like, if you had, for example, Europeans put in the exact, like, let's say you flipped the roles, like, identically. I think that even as a genetic basis, I still don't think that even if Europeans were put in the same situation, that you'd get the exact same result. I think that genetically, and again, this is even like a proven thing, okay, like that genetically, Africans are more violent than, say, Northern Europeans. Like,
but then again, is that
have,
a function of the color of the skin or a function of different genetical changes in the body over time?
Right, where we would say it's an inherited trait, right? Because we don't think that, obviously there's a part of it is environment. I'm not going to deny that, but I think that it's definitely been proven that there's a genetical.
Because then I would just say there would just be a general truth, and you just start with Noah, let's say, as the earth repopulated and people separated into groups, and especially after the Tower of Babel, which I believe is a real event, and people separated into groups, skin color put aside, there's just going to be differences, environmental and genetic differences that will arise over time as people group into different places and live different lives, and things just change over a long period of time. I mean, to me, that's just obvious. And so the cultures that arise that are different are not a function of these people are better than those people. And especially as a Christian, we wouldn't be saying that. We would identify, of course, that all are evil in front of God. The differences that arise are just logical differences because there are just different people in different places. And so genetics kind of gets, in a sense, because of the groupings, and then of course the fall of man, so the imperfection of reproduction, genetics just kind of gets squished and maneuvered, and some types of genetics end up here and some end up down there, and it's just a general separation around the globe. And then you'd expect certain cultures to be different, and of course as cultures move and shake and then end up in different locations with different types of experiences, and then kind of interact with each other, some are going to end up a certain way and some are going to end up another way. So I
think the biggest thing is that I do believe that fundamentally we're all equal in the eyes of God, right? So I think that even the idea of can I be ontologically a racist? Definitely not. That's just an argument I don't think you can make. It's contrary to my own religion. So
right, exactly. Yes, but again, so I will point out, is all the nuances you provided going to be coherent to most people you say them to? No. And if you want them to be, they need to be presented with such wisdom that you're making it clear that you're not just saying, well, black people are violent. Because you know what most people hear? Most people who put the kind of effort in Laser does to thinking and studying, or the kind of effort, probably some people in this call do as well. I don't know exactly who, but they're just going to hear, well, you're saying black people are violent. And when they hear that, they don't make the distinctions you do. What they do is they think about black people, so they think about skin color, and then they think about violent, and so they think about you just attributing violence to a skin color, and like, wow, that sounds racist. And it does sound racist, obviously, with all the distinctions you're making, because you're very logical and you're working through things, and I understand what you're saying. Different game, different ball game, different kind of discussion, and that needs to be, again, saved and wisely distributed when it's needed or effective in communicating an idea, right? I think, again, one of the biggest lessons for someone like Tunic is not everybody is going to care or understand what you're talking about, even though you know it. And I had to learn this too. I guess in a different context, because it's very clear that you and me have spent our study times in different places. But I had to learn this too. Like sometimes the people I'm talking to, they don't understand what I'm saying. They're not hearing it the way I know I'm saying it, or they don't care. And it could even bring negative results if they don't care or not understand so much that they really think I'm just saying something else. And
right.
And that is this is why, this is kind of the basis as for why I've advised you in other times to just be like, hey, dude, you got to just not talk to him. You got to just not respond. It's not like you're dishonoring the gospel. It's not like you're being stupid or you're being ignorant or you're losing a battle. No, you're recognizing that this conversation will not be profitable for any sort of learning or edification in this context.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. He said Kendrick Lamar makes racist music. I don't even care about the response to that. I don't care. Don't you tell me.
Funnily enough, that was one of their main points, that I was a racist. And I said that, and I'll sum it up real quick. Okay,
fine. Real quick.
Kendrick Lamar, in the lyric he says that Drake is not white enough to say the N-word. And I said that if you made Kendrick Lamar white and said, or he's not black enough to say the N-word, sorry. Okay, and I've said if you switch those races and you make Kendrick Lamar white, and then you said Drake is not white enough to say or do whatever action, it's objectively a racist remark. And so that's what I was trying to, the statement I was trying to make, right?
I mean, and that would be an example where you have to talk to the other side and be like, okay, you gotta just use your brain, because I mean, if you say that someone is not a race enough to do a race thing, then by definition that is a racist remark. I mean, there's just no getting around that. So I mean, again, that I think that's just clear and cut. I think that any response to that would just be like, well, you're a racist for even bringing that up, would just be born out of just not listening or emotion.
Nope, just like everything they say.
Yes. I mean, and I agree. There is some aspect of that. I feel like I've been fair so far. You can tell me if I haven't. Again, I'm open to the other side. I want them to listen to all this and respond. I feel like I've been fair so far, trying to address where Tunic has gone wrong and where the other side has gone wrong. So I am doing my best to care about both of you guys. Instead of, as just to take a break for the other comment, as this guy says, Savior says that I should just ban them because they're so disruptive. Now, again, I've responded to this many times. But I have pointed out a few things about this, and I'll do this now that we have the big call. I'll do it one more time. There's a few reasons why someone like Laser is not banned yet. The first reason is that I cannot ban someone fairly when two things. Number one, at first, when we kind of started having issues, I didn't have any rules of moderation, and I didn't have any clear outlines as to what constitutes a ban and a timeout and what doesn't. Something that's changed, and something that, of course, now is a lot more instated. So it's a little easier to ban or time out someone now, because I'm like, oh, well, I've said don't do this, and it's written there. You shouldn't do it. But before, I didn't have that. So we had to kind of ease into that, and I wanted to be as fair as possible and as gracious as possible, so I wouldn't ban anyone, either Laser or someone else, that could say to themselves, oh, well, this guy was just biased because that guy did it and he didn't get banned. Like I wanted to establish, like, here are timeouts, here are responses to your actions. You're moving closer to a ban. Now we have these rules. Listen. So that would be the first thing. And then I also point out that because of the way you guys, and by you guys, you know who you are, the way you've been interacting with the other side here, both the Christians and the non-Christians, or the religionists and the non-religionists, kind of look the same in the conversation. So it becomes really hard to exact any sort of response. And I had this conversation specifically with Tunic as well, any sort of response to ban or punish somebody, because then again, the same thing can be said. Well, this guy was doing the same thing. Why would you time out me and not him? I mean, when you guys look like the people you're saying that shouldn't be in the server, then I have no basis to ban them and not you. That's why I say, especially a few weeks ago, if I was going to ban Laser, then I would have to ban you, because that would be consistent. Right. And I'm going to be consistent with the way I apply the punishment to the server, so I can try to be as Christ-like as possible. The last thing is, I'm trying, the purpose of my server is to spread the gospel. Like the whole... Sorry, Tunic, I just want to finish this. Any meaningful understanding of the gospel understands that everybody starts opposed to God. Everybody starts without wisdom, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of... Tunic?
Yep.
Wisdom. Thanks. You didn't say it, but I wish you did. Like, I mean, these are the main premises of a true faith and relationship with God. You don't have wisdom, you don't have righteousness, you don't have anything until you come to Christ. So we would expect everyone who is not of Christ to not have any attributes except for opposition to Christ and foolishness.
Right.
Okay. And so I'm almost finished. So I want to get these thoughts out, and then I want you can respond. And so I'm trying to be someone of care for the unsaved, because I actually care about their lives. Like, it matters to me. Laser's life matters to me. He's not just an inhuman person. He actually, it matters to me. I want him to know the gospel. I want him to know the things of Christ, to give as much grace as possible, that there might be a chance for them to listen and think and repent, or really hear the gospel. That's what I'm going to do. Now, you might not like that because you just like to get angry because you have your thoughts. Well, first of all, individually, probably your thoughts don't matter that much. And second of all, again, the heart of your heart in that situation is not really one that is desiring for the salvation of the people around you, but that is the one of Christ, right? So, think about, something that comes to mind is think about Paul, and of course the Jews were massive persecutors of Christians and massive rejectors of Christ. And Paul said, when he talks about the Jews, he says, I would wish myself accursed if I could, for the sake of, my people, that they might, be saved, basically. And so it's like, if that is the attitude of Paul, then I mean, this is to some respect, I would want to take that attitude and be a little bit gracious with people who we are behaving exactly how we would expect them to behave, which is immediately opposing the things of God. So, thank you for your comment. I think that I have been clear on that. I think that I'll allow Glowing to unmute in just a second. I think that any response to that, I think, just is not either. It's not regarding their actions as bad as they should, or is just not listening, to be honest. But anyway, Glowing, you can speak, and then Tunic.
I actually forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry, I just wanted to get everything out. But hey, if you remember, you can message.
That I think we've been a few individuals from the old Laser Allen, group of fellas has come to our server. Just thought you should be aware of that.
Sorry?
Like more from their friend group have joined.
Cool.
Your Discord server.
Oh, Zoe. Yeah, no, that's fine. And I'll treat them the same way. I am capable enough, and I can handle enough to be able to do what I need to do with those people, and they will not ruin.
No way, Sebatronic is here. Oh my God, this is actually insane.
I did not expect them to be here. I can't lie.
Crazy.
I mean, and listen, I mean, there has been potential and actually in action, capable and good conversation and thoughtful conversation between people in this community and who don't believe and people who do believe. We've seen it. In fact, I've had good conversations with Zoe, who just joined call. I've had great conversations with Alphanetic, who is a staunch atheist. Right. And it's been seen, it's been done, it's been demonstrated. It usually is not practiced. And so we can't. So I think it just falls on some of you guys sometimes with how you react in your feelings. I mean, I saw Space Cow Pie say, well, I don't feel like it was actually that bad on my part. Okay, well, you know what? I just think that's just a little bit of blindness on your end. So
a little
it's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying.
All right.
Maybe let him give his case.
I'm just saying what he typed. I'm saying what he typed.
No, I was saying that they have done worse.
Okay.
I never said we didn't do anything.
So I think, though...
They have like a laundry list of shit that they've done.
Well, I had a laundry list for Tunic. And he heard about
There's
it.
like hella business classes going on, and it's like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's funny. But
I guarantee you the laundry list for Tunic is nowhere near as extensive as it is for Laser and Co.
Okay, well, I've seen all that I need to see, and I'm running the server, so I mean, I think they're about equal. So, but thanks, man. Maybe when you start a Jesus server and you want to measure with non-equal scales, you can go ahead and do that. Sorry to be flippant about it. I just feel like, okay, great. I just feel like I've explained this in detail, and just telling me, well, that's not true, is not really a response, to be honest.
Because it doesn't seem like you're listening is the problem.
I have listened.
We don't get any response. We don't get any. We send shit that they're doing.
I know, and I've responded to that.
No, it's just like, oh, that seems kind of bad.
That's not what I've done. So that's just false.
Dude, I haven't seen, you haven't responded in that group chat where we've kept sending stuff after stuff. The only time you did anything was when that guy was spamming all those GIFs.
Okay, well, most of what you've sent, I've talked to those particular people, and
they say exactly what you want to hear.
Well, it's not really that. I'm just being a little bit more gracious than you guys would be in this situation. There are a few people who are on last legs, and they just happen to have stopped right as I've said, "Hey, well, don't do this, or this again, or it's a ban." I think
they're taking advantage of the fact that you're being so lenient.
Okay,
they're taking great advantage of that fact.
And that might be how you see it, but I'd rather be a little more gracious than a little less gracious, because what again, I say to myself, there is a threshold, and they're close. I mean, Laser says the N-word one more time, and he is banned permanently, and he knows that. I told him.
Laser said the N-word?
No, I'm giving an example. I told him after the most recent raid, I said, hey, if there's another raid in the server at all, you're gone. And he said to him, what if it's not me? And I was like, well, I don't know if I can trust you. So you'd be on. I don't think there's been a raid right now. It seems like a few people have joined, but I mean, I don't know if I can qualify that as a raid. Maybe. I don't know. We've been doing this.
The problem is whatever kind of rules you set now, he's just gonna find some other way to get one over on the server. He literally made himself clear when he entered the server. He's here to cause disruption. He's here to cause chaos and watch the server burn.
Yeah,
by self-admission.
And there's a lot of people who have spoken that way about God and then turned and became Christian. So I mean, I just want to be. There are a lot of people who are one step away from bans, and it probably will happen if they continue. And I've given them specific things, and they haven't done those things since I've pointed out to them. They haven't caused major disturbance since I've talked to them. I've responded to everything you've sent me. Not everything you sent me is the hugest deal. Most of it I have also addressed. I have banned certain people. There are a few banned, and I am going to continue in the same way, so that there's max, because I can then say there was max opportunity, and I showed the max ability for that person to respond and listen to the good news. And I don't think that's the heart you have. And that, again, if you want to run your own server like that, that's fine. I want to be a little more gracious than your average member or your average Discord server owner for the sake of God, even if it's a little bit more challenging for us, who, again, as Christians are supposed to be very forgiving at nature, to handle that. So I've said what I've said on it. I have listened to you. I've read everything that you sent. So I have also responded to everything that you have sent. So what you said there was a little false, but I think you just don't like it because you don't necessarily agree. But I mean, I'm trying to do things a little bit differently because I actually care. Like, it matters to me if Laser might repent and come to the gospel. That makes a difference in my head. Like, I actually care about that. I would like that to happen. There is a point in which there is a ban, and again, he knows. He's like really on his last moment. There's not really much more words he can say, right? There's really only one more good screenshot and he's gone. But like, I like to say that I'm actually caring about his salvation a little bit more. So all right, I've said what I've said on that. You can disagree. It's fine.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fair. But the other issues, I don't want to be banned when we have not had this as extensive of a laundry list as him. Tunic earlier, I don't know if this is real. You said that it wasn't real. I don't know why Tunic would say this, that we were on thin ice and that we were about to be banned.
So I actually corrected that. So that I actually did respond to that in full and corrected that statement in the chat that you're speaking of.
I didn't think we did. I thought we were going to talk about it.
Okay, I think that some people just might have missed that, or just not everybody was there during some of the response. But I think there was a talk. Maybe you just weren't there. I think maybe you were like the one person that was not there. But I spoke in full about that and responded to that. So I mean, maybe you just missed it. But I responded. I said that's not what I said.
Barley, were you there? Barley, were you there?
I think he was there.
Yeah.
You were there? When did this happen?
I just typed it.
Yeah, I thought you said when you were typing that we were going to call about it.
Yeah, I was hoping to. If you look in the chat, I tried 3 times to see if people were available and people weren't. So it's kind of hard to get like a group together, and then no one else really said anything about it, about the call. So, and then, maybe I'm a busy guy, but I did try to get a call going, but I did respond to it. So I did actually address that, and said that that's not what I meant. And that's not what I actually said at all. I was just making a comment on the behavior in a particular moment. Again, I don't know. It's already been responded to. And if you want to follow up on that particular comment, you can DM me. I'll call with you for 4 hours if that's what it takes to assuage your current feelings on it. So, okay.
All right. That sounds good, man.
All right. Thank you, Space Cow Pie. So it makes me laugh that the Discord. Like, it'll be funny if I'm ever in a formal debate with like Alphanetic or Tunic, and I look across to the other table, and I'm like, "Airy Tunic," and then people in the crowd are like, "What did he just say?" Instead of whatever your actual name is. This generation is debates will be funny in when all the Discord theologians become more real, because people Like, there's no way if I was debating Tunic in a formal setting, I wouldn't call him Airy Tunic instead of whatever his real name is.
Can we thumbs down Skizzle, please?
Who?
Tone 5, please. Thumbs down, Tone 5, Skizzle.
What does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about.
Gooning.
Okay.
Gooning.
All right. Yeah, fine.
Don't worry about it. I was just...
All right, I'll let you handle it.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. So moving on. We're probably about to wrap up here.
Right. So the conclusion is I'm not racist or anti-Semitic.
Well, I mean, I don't think you're anti-Semitic again, when you listen carefully to exactly what you're particularly speaking of. We didn't get through all the racist stuff. There's some things in here that, again, I would just need you to explain in full before me to understand, because I could definitely see why, like someone would think you're racist given these simple comments. Like, you know, I said my people weren't colonizers. I mean, I'd have to hear an explanation on that. But like, there are certain things here which I understand. I mean, you know, when Tunic says
my people not being colonizers.
Yeah, you can speak about that.
So regions never colonized. So that's what I mean.
I didn't hear what you said. Can you say you cut out? Can you cut out? Can you say again?
Yeah, that's my bad. I said historically Norwegian.
Cut out again.
Oh, you cut out again, but I'm assuming you're saying historically Norwegians never colonized, which is probably true. I mean, again, I think that some people, again, in the way you might say it, might hear you saying, you know, whites haven't colonized. I don't know. But again, the level of conversation, the server varies. You said, but the other things I can just take away because I believe them. You said that you don't owe reparations to black people. I mean, I would agree. I mean, I didn't enslave black people. And so I wouldn't owe reparations to them either. I think that it's kind of an odd. I think that is one of the odd parts about the whole movement, that somehow like I am guilty for whatever other people did. That's just unbiblical. The guilt is specific to the individuals that do them. And then there's some Old Testament ideas of that guilt being punishment being dripped down to the family, but that has a different context. You said that you can be racist to white people. Yes, obviously you can logically be racist to white people. Obviously, culturally, that doesn't seem possible. But the point is that when you're speaking to Tunic, he's speaking at a very logical level. Logically, you can be racist to any type of person. So, and then you say you talked a lot about preserving white Christian European culture by limiting the influx of immigrants, not of that culture, to certain nations. So what is this one about? Actually, that's it. I do want to hear about this.
Can you restate that?
You say, also talked a lot about preserving white Christian European culture by limiting the influx of immigrants, not of that culture, to certain nations.
I think we should limit immigration from countries that do not share the culture of the country they're immigrating to, because ethnically homogenous societies function better than ethnically diverse societies. So this is also a personal anecdote as well, but I've watched Norway crumble because of immigration from places that are not from white Christian culture, and that's just how it is. So I think that it should not be allowed somebody from a contrary culture to immigrate, because I don't think it's possible for people to assimilate in any sort of lifetime that is at all meaningful. It's not about skin color; it's literally just a culture thing.
Yeah, I mean that one is probably the one I'd have the biggest issue with, but that one is also the most far removed from things of religion that I don't really care, to be honest. It's not a really racist comment; it's just an odd one. Again, the way Tunic is saying these things, he's arguing on a level where you need to respond to him on a level that's not the level of, whoa, that sounds racist. And like, again, I tell Tunic that you have to think about these things before you say them, because most people aren't hearing it on the level that you want them to hear it or you want to talk about it. But again, you listen back to the other side, to the lasers out there. You listen back to this full discourse. There is no clear indication. There's just denials of what would be considered clearly racist or anti-Semitic. I agree that a lot of these ideas Tunic has, when they're simplified or said in the heat of the arguments you have, certainly sound anti-Semitic or racist. because of how he's going to perceive things a certain way that he says because he knows what he's thinking. And then people, especially who have a different worldview, or definitely I could see how they would perceive him very different and find him very racist and extreme. And I remember when I was talking to Alan not too long ago, and I even was saying, well, it certainly seems like he's racist, because I hadn't had this conversation with him either, to be honest with you. So this list of things that I received, one of the reasons that I had this conversation today is not just because, again, I'm very disappointed with the level of communication in the server, but because this list Tunic gave me that we just went through, I was like, wow, this certainly seems very anti-Semitic and racist. And this is why you have to hear people out and then respond to them on that level. And that's adult discussion. And if you can't have it, then don't have it. And the person who can speak on this level needs to be wise enough to say, well, then it shouldn't be had. I shouldn't engage this. And the Christian... Right. The Christian should be a step further and already be able to say to themselves, am I going to be able to honor God by talking about this topic on this level in this circumstance, and be able to say, well, certainly not, because I know the nature of these people or their thinking or this worldview or the way I usually am perceived because of in this topic based on who I am talking to. And there should be some wisdom in that, because if you say the right thing technically, but you use it in the wrong context or you apply the wrong wisdom, then you are still dishonoring God with your speech. And I see that a lot.
Yeah, can I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
Sorry. So like certain phrases that Yuri Tunic uses aren't like in a vacuum, aren't like racist, but they're kind of like they sound like the same things those people would use. I think it's better just to use like technically different phrases.
Yeah, and that would be, I agree, and that would.
I think you have to be very.
It's not like he's that because he says it. It's just use different like phrasing. I think.
So I think I should clarify. The best way I can sum up the whole immigration thing is that I do not like multiculturalism. I don't like the mix of cultures, because I think what happens is that objectively, each individual culture gets diluted, and I think that's a net bad thing, because I like cultures. And so I don't think we should attempt to mingle different cultures, okay? And so that's what my whole thing is. If you're immigrating from a country that has a different culture, what's going to happen is your culture is going to get diluted at the same time that mine is. And I see both as problematic. I think it's a net negative for both people. So that's why I'm traditionally against this idea of, culture mixing. So that's all. That's the...
And see, that clarification, while it may not be to the agreement of everybody, is certainly not a racist or anti-Semitic thought. It's just a different type of thought. And again, I will, to respond to Glowing, what Glowing just said is called exerting wisdom, or in a better sense, Christian wisdom. Like, again, a Christian should be able to look and say, wow, these phrases are going to perceive this way. I should use different phrases. And if we can't do that, and then you insist on not even trying to do that or recognizing that that's important, then as a Christian, you are responsible for that misdeed. And you could say, well, the other guy sucks. Okay, great. I'm not disagreeing. But again, a Christian has a certain standard, and they should care about how they communicate so that they can stand before Christ and say they're honoring him. So I don't know if Zoe had something. Yeah. They're unmuted.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that I think, and this is for Erie, like, you have to be a lot more careful about like not racism baiting, like I said earlier. I just think there are ways to engage in conversations productively, and I don't think that making it so that people are going to latch on to the way that something sounds is the right way to go about that.
Yeah, no, I think that literally is I do that, like, in the truest sense of the word. I think I intentionally
truest sense of the word.
Make vague statements. Like, I make vague statements that I know will be provocative.
Yeah, like whenever I can kind of tell when you know what you're about to do by like saying
right. Like, I say it enough to where they'll be like provoked into being like, "Wow, this is such a horrible thing to say," but then the explanation makes them seem like idiots. Like, that's the whole trope. Which I admit.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're necessarily going to say things in good faith a ton. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but I just do it personally. I don't think it's a great look.
So I can say it's also a sinful look. So thanks, Zoe, for that. I appreciate that. And so, like, don't do that. Like what you just described, stop doing it. Like, this is why I say to the rest of these folks in the call, when we were, especially early on, before I was making rules, because of that type of behavior, if you said to me I had to ban Laser, well, then I also got to ban Tunic, because that's not appropriate. Honestly, it's just... That's the worst, in my opinion, because you're going out of your way to cause strife. You're going out of your way to cause discord. And it's just, in no sense, in any type of server, is that really how we should be acting. I mean, you want to talk about the biblical words on defending our faith. It says that always be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies in us, and do so with gentleness and respect, and those are important things. So not only should we do so with gentleness and respect, which is lacking, but it's saying we should always be ready. It's not saying we should always give it. We should always jump at the chance to give all our thoughts and even provoke these conversations. It says we should just be ready, and there's a calmness to that. There's like I've studied, so I'm ready when the topic is there. Like, for example, today, I mean, I don't go out of my way to start arguments, but I saw a Wait was talking about some things and that I didn't disagree with. So then because I saw that, then I responded, and I was ready to give an answer, and I gave a simple answer, and I didn't insult him during the 12-minute voice message. And like, I mean, I just like, that's how, especially if you're someone who does a lot of studying, and you know a lot of things, and that you're prepared for most arguments, well then, in order that you could use the gift God's given you in a way that honors him, I mean, you're called to a much higher standard to how you speak too. So
yeah.
So I think any questions or comments, I'll open up for questions or comments from anybody. You can say anything, I'll respond to it, we'll respond to it. But that is everything I had. Again, to the other side, Laser, Alan, if they ever listen to this, I think I've been absolutely fair. I have said equally constructive and negative things about you guys and about Tunic's behavior. I have not held back on either group or person. And we've talked through all the topics carefully and talked about the details, so we can answer the questions. Is Tunic actually ignorantly racist and bigoted or not? And I think it's been just very... I think it's all come out pretty clearly. So if there are, again, any responses or comments, speak now. Well, that's the quietest I've ever seen this server. So in that case, I guess we're wrapped up, which is nice because it's 11:30 and I'm tired. So next week we'll try to finish up Matthew 13. Any last words from you, Tunic, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Dope. All right. Well, then hopefully that will sit in your guys' hearts, and this server, I mean, I'd rather do this. I'd rather fight through this and work on character building so that we can have a server of a lot of different types of people who interact appropriately, instead of just, by the way, perpetrate the same behavior by just getting angry and banning people when we don't like them. Obviously, we'll have to do that sometimes when we get to extremes. But again, grace and communication is, this is the way. So,